Girls just want to have fun. However, some girls' idea of fun isn't very fun for anyone else. It's not uncommon for content creators or influencers to get exposed for thinking that the popularity of their online presence will let them get away with murder. What is uncommon is that some people take the murder part a bit more literally than the average Instagrammer with an inflated ego. For a select few, being arrested for petty crimes, scamming people, or being mean to a fast food clerk just doesn't cut it. They have to move far above and beyond those mild misdemeanors. Today, we'll be looking at some examples of how looks can be deceiving, and how even the most seemingly innocent individuals can be hiding a dark secret, if you just dig a little beneath the Snapchat filter. These are the e-girl killers. One of the more popular genres on TikTok is cosplaying. Many young fans of anime, video games, and other media have garnered significant recognition and followings from just dressing up as their favorite fictional characters. Such is the case of Maryanne Oliver Snow, better known by the online monikers Snow the Salt Queen and Yandere Freak. As the second name suggests, Mary would often dress up as characters who were yandere, which, if you're not familiar with weeb vocabulary, means being overly attached, stalkerish, or otherwise obsessed with a potential significant other, to the point of engaging in psychopathic behavior in order to gain someone's love. This was the main premise of the game Yandere Simulator, for example, which was popular on gaming YouTube a while back. Mary's videos would go on to attract widespread attention, ultimately resulting in the garnering of over 1 million followers on the platform. One of the most popular personas Mary adopted was that of an anime villain named Junko Enoshima. Junko, in the universe of anime and the video game series she's from, is presented as unhinged, violent, and often unpredictable, at times portraying herself as a ruthless antagonist, and at others, acting as an innocent yet charismatic schoolgirl. What was a little concerning is that Mary often played into many of the characters they cosplayed as, to the point that they were being referred to as alters. For those of you who are fortunate enough to be unaware of what this means, it has become somewhat of a trend for many TikTokers to have alternate personas that they supposedly slip in and out of at any given time, usually under the guise of having the extremely rare mental illness known as DID, or dissociative identity disorder. While the actual condition is seriously life-destructive, it's unfortunately been co-opted by attention-seeking teenagers, whose idea of being quirky is pretending to be mentally ill, which, if you didn't know, is a mental illness in and of itself. The same way communities like that of Tumblr normalized and romanticized being depressed so much that they ended up self-inducing it, TikTokers are doing the same to DID, which is a major red flag and a sign of recklessness. Mary would become friends with Helen Rose Hastings, a girl who shared her love for cosplay and anime. The two would become good friends, often collaborating on TikToks and taking photos with each other, something they'd continue to do for years. Mary first encountered controversy in 2019 for cosplaying in a graveyard, which was seen as very disrespectful and tone-deaf, causing Mary to be widely criticized for it. But that was only the first of Mary's many scandals, who, over the years, would receive many other accusations from various figures in the community of being toxic behind the scenes. Regardless of this, Mary's relative popularity and success in the cosplay community would continue to grow. Though it was never a secret that Mary carelessly played around with dark and disturbing things on social media posts, this would soon begin leaking into her real life, manifesting far outside of cosplaying. One night, when Mary and a group of friends, including Helen, were watching the TV show Gotham while smoking weed and drinking copious amounts of alcohol, Mary stated somewhat fortuitously that they had the same handgun as the Penguin, and proceeded to show it to the group, who began passing it around recklessly. The weapon had been left there by Mary's ex-boyfriend, and according to him, the gun had never been fired and was completely safe, as he had removed all of the bullets from the gun, leaving it unloaded. The group allegedly started waving the gun around as a joke, pointing it at each other and laughing as they did. Unbeknownst to any of them, the gun was actually loaded, a mishap that would soon change the course of the lives of everyone present. At one point, Helen jokes that Mary should point the gun at her, as if to kill her, saying, "Oh, shoot me." Mary complied, but when the trigger was pulled, the gun went off. Though it didn't have a magazine in it, the firearm had a bullet already loaded in its barrel, and with its safety off, the gun shot straight through Helen's head, much to the group's shock and dismay. After frantic calls to the police for medical care, Helen was taken to the hospital and was kept on life support for 2 days before tragically dying there. As a result of this, Mary was taken into police custody and charged with manslaughter, but was released on bail 5 days later. This extremely tragic accident could have easily been prevented in a myriad of different ways, had the safety been left on, or had the group exercised even a modicum of caution, and most importantly, if Mary's ex-boyfriend hadn't left his loaded gun in the care of someone who was not licensed to own or use it, this could have been avoided. Given all of this undeniable negligence, one would expect Mary to feel a good deal of guilt over it. This is where the story becomes a bit confusing, however. After a brief 3-week-long hiatus from the usual social media posting, Mary would return as if nothing had happened, despite facing charges for having murdered someone. This blasé attitude was so thorough that Mary would go on to attend cosplay conventions. And as baffling as it was, most people simply did not know the story of how Helen died whatsoever. Most users just assumed Mary's hiatus was nothing more than a break due to mental health or otherwise personal reasons, and thought nothing of it as they continued to watch the content. Of course, nobody can hide from a crime as serious as this forever, and after Mary's court documents became public roughly a year later, many began to criticize the cosplayer. The fact that Mary had carried on with the typical posts on TikTok seriously did not bode well, as it seemed like the ultimate display of a lack of empathy and regret over what had happened to Helen. It is also a possibility that those things were outlets for Mary to temporarily forget about the accident and deal with the trauma of having taken someone's life. But whatever the case may be, the backlash was severe enough to result in Mary privating and then soon deleting all social media. As of late 2021, Mary was standing trial for her friend's death, and the outcome of the case remains unknown. However, the story still serves as a grim reminder of how important it is to practice firearm safety. Melissa Turner was a Florida native who, in her teenage years, struggled a lot with body image issues. Her weight was often a source of insecurity, and she lacked confidence in her day-to-day life, something that many people can relate to. As she entered her early 20s, Melissa would go through college, accumulating a great deal of debt from student loans, but failing to gain anything that would land her a job, leading her to become frustrated and depressed. However, rather than give up, Melissa decided to seek out an alternative source of income. She would begin working out and eating healthier, and soon after, developed an interest in online cosplaying, which would manifest in her posting photos online, encountering relatively mild success. In 2013, she met someone by the name of Sin, a man who would soon become her boyfriend, and the two seemed to have a healthy relationship. As this was happening, Melissa's career as a cosplayer began to take shape. She often dressed up as various pop culture characters, something she would become known for in the online cosplaying community. Over time, Melissa would come to learn of the success many other women online had experienced in the pornographic world. While completely different in nature, her experience and audience developed from creating content as a cosplayer would help her quickly find footing in the genre, officially making her a cam girl. Under the name Two-Thorned Rose, she would release lewd photographs and videos of herself, and also participate in the production of numerous adult videos, which would successfully hit its target audience as her social media presence would grow exponentially, earning her a fan base of people who would continuously praise her for her looks. With all of these people paying for and promoting her content, she finally gained financial stability, and far above it. Over time, she decided to become independent as far as content creators are concerned. Instead of relying on getting jobs from pre-established companies, she started to monetize the pictures and videos she published of herself cosplaying on her own website, which is now defunct, twothornedrose.com. This was a time before sites like OnlyFans were popular platforms for sharing this sort of content, so Melissa was, in a sense, trailblazing this wave of similar camgirl operations by trying to make it on her own. She also decided to make a YouTube channel around this time where she posted videos such as, "Watch me swallow a 10.5-inch sausage, no gag reflex." Unsurprisingly, her channel didn't last long and was soon deleted off the platform for posting mature and sexual content. Though even then, for the brief time her channel was up, she did get some amount of success on the platform. As time went on, her boyfriend Sin became more and more involved in the process of content creation. This move, though having worked out at first, eventually would come to backfire on Melissa, as the involvement of business and money in their relationship rendered it somewhat toxic, ultimately causing the two to break up, which dealt a serious blow to Melissa's business model. Despite this loss, Melissa would soon meet another romantic partner in 2017 named Matthew Trustler. Their relationship initially seemed quite positive, as Matthew was known by his family and friends as a caring individual, and he provided Melissa with love and support during one of the most tumultuous periods in her life. The relationship was going so well, in fact, that in December of 2018, she moved into a 2-story home with her boyfriend Matt in Florida. From an outside perspective, it seems like Melissa was living in the happy life she'd always dreamed of. However, as time went on, tensions between her and her boyfriend began to grow. Despite the happy portrayal on social media, their involvement would soon meet the same fate as Melissa's previous, deteriorating into pure toxicity as Matthew grew so focused on his relationship with her that he had essentially become isolated from his family and close friends. Their arguments would become more frequent and aggressive, and many who lived nearby would allege to often hear shouting matches between the two. These tensions would eventually culminate in October of 2019, when Melissa had called the police, claiming that she had come home and found Matthew dead on their patio. Despite the best efforts of paramedics, Matthew was too far gone, and was declared dead soon after. As stated before, Melissa said that she had found Matthew like that, and had no idea what happened to him. At first, her story seemed plausible. When Matthew was found, analysts determined that he'd already been dead for a long stretch of time, and in addition to this, it wouldn't make sense for Melissa to kill him. While the couple had arguments in the past, nobody would ever assume that it could have escalated to that level, and Melissa seemed genuinely distraught about the ordeal. However, after being brought in for questioning by police, Melissa changed her story. Her new story was that Matthew had come home extremely drunk, a fact that upset Melissa. She alleged that, after an argument between them got intense, Matthew attacked her, lunging at her with a kitchen knife with the intention to kill her. She claimed that she had grabbed the knife and killed Matthew in self-defense. Despite this new story seeming plausible on the surface, police grew suspicious as to why she didn't just tell them the truth from the beginning, and decided to investigate further. After searching, they discovered a camera that was being used by a neighbor, who was close by at the moment of Matt's death. While the police footage obtained from it did not show any visual evidence of the encounter, it did pick up most of the audio. The exchange that was recorded presented a much different story than what Melissa was saying. Based on the recordings, Melissa was actually the first one to scream at Matthew, and not the other way around. To make matters worse, she was repeatedly threatening him and saying she wanted him to die, accompanied by various loud noises. In addition to this, many of the injuries Matthew sustained were indicative of someone who was acting in self-defense. Melissa's wounds, on the other hand, were not nearly as severe in comparison. All of this, on top of the fact that she had waited for over 4 hours to call the police and report what had happened, and then pretending that she had no idea what had caused Matthew's death, was, beyond the shadow of a doubt, an indication of her guilt, and she was soon taken into custody to await trial. Soon after the events took place, numerous outgoing phone calls Melissa had made from jail were recorded by authorities without her knowing. In some of these calls, she bragged about the thousands of dollars she had made off of her online career, and overall showed very little remorse for the killing of her boyfriend, which did not go a long way to give the jury a positive impression as far as her innocence went. Over the next few years, Melissa would go through a lengthy trial, in which she would claim that Matthew was abusive, depressed, and was struggling with alcoholism, and that she was actually the victim, going on to say, "I loved him and I didn't want to do that to him. The last thing that he wanted, he always tried to hide his drinking, his mental health, and how depressed he was. He tried to hide it from everyone. The last thing that he would want was for the world to know any of it." Though her story was corroborated by her mother, who claimed Melissa took the abuse in silence, there simply was no evidence to support Melissa's claims. And in 2022, she was officially sentenced by the court to 20 years in prison. It goes without saying that her career has been long over, with her website and most forms of social media being deactivated or suspended, with this tragic incident putting a full stop on all of it, leaving Melissa with much more than student loans to worry about. Some people blame the legacy media as being responsible for the glorification of criminals and their path of destruction. If you buy into that train of thought, then social media magnified it to the umpteenth degree. With the rise of true crime communities, it's become easier than ever to find information on serial killers, and unfortunately, their respective sycophantic fandoms. One Google search of a name will yield thousands of results, including their motivations, history, and every other detail you can think of. While all of this easily accessible information has certainly led to more attention being directed to notice potential red flag behaviors and prevent similar crime sprees, it's also led to the unintended side effect of making the job of copycat killers easier. Anyone who sympathizes with a killer is now capable of knowing exactly how to reproduce their idol's MO step by step. Case in point, German 19-year-old Sarah M. Sarah's full name and identity have been hidden for the most part due to restrictive German privacy laws, but this hasn't at all hindered her actions from garnering attention from onlookers on the internet. Originally born in Switzerland, Sarah was your stereotypical young girl. She took pride in her appearance, was well kept, and had a minor social media presence. During the year 2017, Sarah would repeatedly get in trouble with the law for excessive drug abuse. It's documented that she was often completely uncooperative and antagonistic towards authorities, often hurling insults and antagonizing them. Additionally, she was found to have swastikas drawn on her hands, which is strictly illegal in Germany. Eventually, this penchant of hers for breaking the law began developing into an obsession with 2 American serial killers, namely Ted Bundy and Richard Ramirez. For those unfamiliar with their crimes, Ted Bundy was a serial killer and rapist with a victim count so extensive that he himself wasn't even sure of how many people he actually murdered, though police estimate it was upwards of 60. He usually targeted young women, luring them by feigning some kind of physical injury, and when they offered help, he'd kidnap them. As for Richard Ramirez, he would break into people's houses in order to kill them, racking up 15 victims in total. Sarah's obsession became so great that she would plaster posters of their faces in her room, as she would begin thinking of her own plot to become an infamous serial killer herself. One thing Sarah was obviously very aware of was that she was physically attractive, and when she started fantasizing about becoming a killer, she realized that this could be useful. Her plan would be then to, under the promise of sex, get her potential victim in a vulnerable position and then kill them before consummating the act, and to repeat this formula as much as possible before being caught. The then 19-year-old girl set up an online dating profile under the pseudonym Domina Cherry, and soon selected her victim, a 38-year-old man by the name of Zayed. After matching with her and striking up a conversation, Sarah began to flirt with him and suggested that they finally meet. Zayed agreed, and he soon picked her up from her apartment, not knowing he was heading towards his untimely doom. While he was driving, Sarah pulled out a knife she had purchased 5 days earlier and plunged it into his neck. As this was happening, Zayed managed to grab the knife from her and stop his car, but he soon succumbed to his injuries and fell into a coma. He died while in intensive care 3 weeks later. Sarah attempted to flee to a nearby town, but was soon caught by police, who found her covered in blood. The news completely shocked those in the community, and the case soon began making international headlines. It was later discovered that on the day she planned to murder Zayed, she had excitedly messaged her friends about how she was about to claim her first victim. When brought to trial, many were shocked at her appearance. She was dressed in newly purchased clothes and had taken the time to do her makeup, something no one would not expect from someone who was on trial for murder and could potentially lose her freedom for the rest of her life. In addition, she had drawn a pentagram on her hand, which was inspired by Richard Ramirez's court appearance in which he did the same, and shown it to the press as they took photos of her. Though whether she was doing this because of genuine satanic beliefs or just to get a rise out of people was unclear. The teenage murderer showed virtually no remorse for her actions, and was later sentenced to 12 years for her crimes, which is honestly quite a short sentence for premeditated murder, especially considering that her 12 years will not be served in an actual prison, but a socio-therapeutic facility. This is due to the fact that just 2 months prior to the murder, she had been diagnosed with having borderline personality disorder as well as strong suicidal thoughts, which prevented her from being condemned into an actual penitentiary. As a matter of fact, her defense attorney was asking for 8 years, so we're actually lucky that we even got 12. While the death of her victim is tragic, she thankfully was not given the opportunity to claim any more lives, and will hopefully serve out the entirety of her prison sentence without harming anyone ever again. However, given her behavior and lack of remorse prior and during the trial, I have a strong feeling we could be hearing from her again after her release. Yuka Takaoka, who has given her actual name as Yuno Kaede, is a 21-year-old half-Chinese Japanese woman who worked at Tokimeki Bin Bim, a Tokyo-based girls' bar as they're commonly known in Japan. This meant that, besides working as a hostess, she'd be available for going on dates with the patrons. That is, if they were willing to continually pay for it as they went on with it. As of the writing of this video, it seems that the bar is still open for business. Because the business model hinges almost entirely on how popular any particular hostess is, they're paid commission fees, meaning if they want to get more customers and make more money, they have to go out of their way to be attractive or unique in some way. Yuka would frequently post videos and photos of herself to Instagram and TikTok, cosplaying as anime characters. But not any anime characters, specifically yanderes, once again. Her videos showed her dancing at her workplace, visibly drawing the attention of many of the clients in the establishment. Her popular social media posts received a lot of encouragement from her employers, not only because they worked insofar as growing her online presence, but it also promoted their business, which was always visible. Her success was enough that, by age 21, she was already managing the place. This brings us to the next member of our story, a man by the name of Luna, as he was known in his line of work, whose real name might be Ryugetsu, or Ryuzuki, as he's been referred to in a few Japanese news articles. Luna was in the same profession as Yuka, but in another bar called Fusion by Youth, in the red light district of Kabukicho, where he provided the services of host and boyfriend for rental. To put it mildly, Luna caught Yuka's attention and she grew increasingly infatuated with him, to the point where she poured thousands of dollars into him, hiring him as her boyfriend for an entire month, which, as much as it pains me to say, is not as uncommon of an occurrence as you may think. Because of her continued devotion to him, and partly because of the massive amounts of money she had spent to keep him around, Yuka and Luna soon began a relationship outside of their careers. As the story goes, Yuka took the relationship much more seriously than Luna did. This isn't that surprising since, after all, the relationship began only because of Yuka's obsessive spending habits. For him, she was little more than an object of money than anything else. In addition, as one of the most successful hosts of the bar he worked at, Luna was often flirting and interacting with other women who paid him to do so, a fact that greatly bothered Yuka, despite her own job requiring her to do the same. She began to grow more and more jealous of Luna and his habits, as she felt she was entitled to his undivided attention, and felt he was growing cold and distant. On May 20th, 2019, Yuka began renting an apartment, and 3 days later, Luna offered to help her clean and organize it, but arrived 3 hours later than the promised time, without giving an explanation as to why. Luna's mysterious absence made Yuka very suspicious and paranoid. After he went to take a bath, she would give in to her curiosity and start looking through his phone. Much to her chagrin, her fears would come true as she would find images of him being intimate with another woman, something that was far beyond the typical purview of someone in his profession. This pushed her well over the brink and into a jealous frenzy, as the man whose attention she'd spent exceeding amounts of money to attain was cheating on her. She would go on to wait until he fell asleep in her apartment, and so he did, not knowing what Yuka had in mind. Suddenly, he would wake up to an intense pain in his abdomen. When examining it, he saw that a knife had been plunged into his stomach, and that it was Yuka who put it there, prompting him to sprint out of the apartment as fast as he could, and nothing but his boxers. Though Yuka did give chase, he successfully fought her off and made it to the lobby of the apartment building before collapsing in a pool of his own blood, pleading for her not to kill him. Yuka didn't call the police, but it didn't take long for other people on the premises to call and notify them that a man had just been stabbed at an apartment complex. Strangely enough, the town they were in, Shinjuku, already had a pretty grim history of suicides and murders, as it wasn't exactly the best area. Police officers would arrive only to find Yuka calmly using her phone and smoking a cigarette while covered in blood, failing to even deal a final blow to a bleeding out Luna. The photos taken were widely circulated online, with Yuka's calm demeanor and attractiveness contrasting with the incredibly violent and gory act. She made no effort to pretend she wasn't responsible for what had happened and was immediately taken into police custody, saying in her defense only the following words: "Since I loved him so much, I just couldn't help it. I thought I would kill him because I thought that was how I could be with him. I thought that expressions such as, 'I like you' and 'I would like to be with you' would become a reality if we both died. I did not want to go anywhere, so I sat down at the outside staircase. I did not call emergency services because I intended to kill myself after watching him die from the stabbing. It was the one thing I put in order in preparing for a new life with him. After I stabbed him, he said he liked me." An unintended consequence of this newfound infamy is that many have now flocked to Yuka's social media pages out of a morbid fascination with her. She was soon referred to by many as a real-life yandere, with many romanticizing her crime and creating fan art of her. There was even a GoFundMe page that managed to raise $3,800 to pay for her bail. Additionally, it seems that people online were thinking the person who reported the crime was the criminal, to which she replied, "You're not the Umi criminal. Don't stab me. Don't be silly. I reported it. If my friends get stabbed, you'll be the second person covered in blood." On the other hand, Luna was taken into medical care soon after the stabbing and, luckily, managed to survive the ordeal without any medical complications, which is quite the feat considering the doctors gave him a mere 20% chance of survival due to the injuries to his internal organs. Soon after recovering from his surgery, Luna would go to his Twitter account and make a few posts about what had happened to him, though they are no longer up. In them, he announced his survival and that he'd be returning to work, attaching an image of himself with friends. He would also post a picture of himself with the caption, "Phoenix Luna," his new moniker in celebration of his surviving his near-death experience. Regarding the incident itself, he would say, "Strangely, I felt no pain, but I was shocked and frightened. I thought I was dead. I lost consciousness when I got to the lobby. I don't remember the rest. I thought that I would die if I got stabbed anymore, and I wanted to call an ambulance. I knew she liked me, so I thought it would stop if I said that I liked her." In surprisingly good humor, he complains that because most of the damage done by the stabbing was to his liver, he could no longer drink, to which his colleagues who were visiting him in the hospital would reply, "If you can't drink, we will on your behalf." Luna would add that he didn't hold a grudge against Yuka, saying, "I think there was a reason for her to stab me. It was also thanks to her that I was able to achieve the sales that I did in less than a year since I became a host." In the ensuing trial, Luna accepted the compensation of 5 million yen from Yuka, the equivalent of about $50,000 in the US. He admitted that it was wrong for him to have cheated on her, and that the incident was partially his fault, asking for a more lenient sentence for the real-life yandere. Yuka was given a later sentence of about 3 years for attempted murder and is currently serving it out in prison. It's unknown whether Luna is still working in his current profession or what he's done since the stabbing, but hopefully, Yuka does not go back to her yandere days when she gets out. Isabella Guzman was a girl who, unfortunately, grew up with a broken family. Her parents were divorced, and because of this, she had a very tumultuous childhood. Her mother, meanwhile, Yoon Mi-hoi, sent her to live with her biological father, Robert Guzman, when she was 7 years of age due to behavioral issues. As the years passed, Isabella eventually moved back in with her mother and stepfather, but the bad blood between the two continued. Isabella's behavior often got her in trouble, eventually leading her to drop out of high school. Her relationship with her mother was anything but healthy, with the two arguing frequently. During a very bad exchange between the two in August 2013, Isabella spit in her mother's face and threatened her, and in fear for her safety, her mother called the police. When the cops arrived, they would try to get Isabella to understand the severity of her actions, but to no avail. In an effort to get her daughter to stop antagonizing her, Isabella's mother called on her father to visit, as their relationship was much more stable. Robert recalled that the conversation seemed productive at the time, and that he had made progress as far as teaching her to be respectful of her mom. However, this effort would soon turn out to be in vain, as Isabella would take the tensions between her and her mother to a new extreme. On the night of August 28, 2013, Yoon-mi Hoi returned home and told her husband Ryan Hoi that she was going to take a shower in the upstairs bathroom. Soon after, Ryan heard a scream from his wife and rushed to see what had happened. When he arrived, he saw Isabella slam the bathroom door shut. He tried to open the door but was unsuccessful, and after seeing a pool of blood seeping out from underneath the door, he decided to rush to the phone and call for help instead. While this was taking place, Isabella walked out of the house without saying a single word to Ryan or even acknowledging his presence. When medical assistants arrived and the door was breached, a bloodied baseball bat was found next to a deceased Yoon-mi Hoi. It was later found that her throat was not only slit open, but that she had been stabbed a total of 151 times, an excessive display of violence that nobody could have expected. Isabella was caught the next day by the police and was immediately brought into custody. When the day of her court hearing arrived, she had to be forced from her cell to the courtroom and continuously made odd faces toward the cameras, almost mocking those watching. Relatives of Isabella were shocked. Her aunt, when asked for comment, stated that while tensions between her and her mother were bad, she couldn't believe Isabella could be capable of such a crime, going as far as to claim that Yoon-mi Hoi had spoiled her daughter. During the trial, it was discovered that Isabella allegedly suffered from schizophrenia and had attacked her mother in a bout of delusion. She had suffered from intense hallucinations, and her defense claimed she was not even aware of the fact that she was killing her own mom. While one might be skeptical of this, her reaction to her stepfather confronting her as well as the excessive amount of violence used did add credibility to this claim. The plea worked, and Isabella was transported to the Colorado Mental Health Institution in an effort to rehabilitate her. At this point in this segment, you might be wondering how she's an e-girl, or what her online significance even is. Well, in a strange turn of events, the trial would become viral on TikTok in 2020, with clips of her court hearing exploding on the platform. Initially, most of these TikToks were short summaries of her story from true crime and TikTok accounts. Later on, more comedic videos would be posted to the website, pointing out the juxtaposition of such an innocent-looking teenage girl being capable of committing such a heinous act. These strange faces she had made were the source of confusion for many, and her status as a viral meme resulted in renewed interest in her story. In 2020, Isabella publicly requested to be released. The stipulation of her sentence was that she had to stay in the hospital under supervision until she was no longer considered a threat to herself or others, and she argued that she had achieved that goal. In June of 2021, her request was finally granted, and she was permitted to leave the mental health institution while continuing regular therapy sessions. When asked for comment, she simply stated that if she could take all of it back, she would. Hopefully, she never reoffends. Courtney Taylor Clenney was born in the late 90s in Midland, Texas. At the young age of 13, she decided she wanted to be a performer, taking classes to learn how to sing, dance, and act. Her parents initially wanted her to be involved with sports in some way, enrolling her in activities like horseback riding and gymnastics, but they supported her preference. In her teenage years, she managed to get roles in theaters such as Snow White and Glinda the Good Witch from The Wizard of Oz. Besides the odd part in a commercial, most of her acting during this period never made it to TV. But after graduating, she moved to Los Angeles, where jobs for aspiring actors are relatively accessible, eventually getting cast as an extra in a couple of movies, namely Boyhood and Everybody Wants Some. Around this time, she also appeared in the music video for the G-Eazy single, Me, Myself, and I. Unfortunately for her, all of these roles were small, often going uncredited and unnoticed altogether. It was during this period of multiple years languishing in obscurity that caused her to start looking somewhere else for what she could do with her talents. The fact that she was blonde, blue-eyed, and relatively fit due to her athletic background led her to explore what she could do with her looks, which first landed her in a bikini competition, namely the 2016 MPC West Coast Classic. She had an impressive first go at competing, winning 6th and 9th place in 2 different categories. More importantly, the reward for this endeavor was much more immediate than anything she'd gotten from acting. A while later, she entered another contest called MPC Brew City, in which she got 1st place. This meant she could enter national competitions, but at this point, Courtney had a different idea in mind. Given she already had an online presence through YouTube and other social media platforms, where she would post vlogs and updates to her preparation for the competitions, there was a growing demand for more pictures of her body. Her Instagram alone had well over 1 million followers by the end of 2016. This culminated in Playboy magazine inviting her to a photo shoot, and Courtney took them up on the offer. Despite how that may sound, it wasn't anything explicit in nature, and according to a video she posted in 2018, she never intended intended to do anything nude. But, as we'll come to know, she definitely changed her mind on this. When she made that claim, OnlyFans had only been around for 2 years, and wasn't even close to the peak in popularity it would hit around 2020. When the potential for profit was too obvious to ignore, Courtney too would lose her reservations about it. Within a year of posting to the platform, she'd amassed almost $1 million, which also came with an alarming personality change. Though people were already noticing a difference in Courtney's demeanor all the way back in her videos from 2018, from polite and ambitious to crass and arrogant, it wasn't until OnlyFans that she became completely detached from reality. All of the money and attention she was getting online had gone to her head. A year later, in 2021, Courtney took another step further in the realm of explicit content, producing straight-up adult videos. This skyrocketed her career, with her social media growing by the millions, along with her bank account. Now, she also had a boyfriend, Christian Toby Obumseli, a fellow Texan who got rich off of getting into Bitcoin early. Courtney always made sure to portray her relationship in a good light, but it would soon become clear that this couldn't be farther from the truth. Something that her friends, acquaintances, and even neighbors at the time noticed was that, when Courtney got drunk, she became a very different person. As it turns out, this was a long-standing issue, with Courtney being arrested for public intoxication all the way back in 2015. The problem would resurface in 2020 when she got arrested for a DUI. She was released after paying an $8,000 bond and installing a breathalyzer in her car, but that didn't stop the alcohol from affecting other areas of her life. More and more, people would witness Courtney's episodes of drunkenness, and often, these would come paired with public spats with her boyfriend Christian, who wasn't the aggressor, but the victim. They began with offhand remarks and demeaning statements, but eventually, these altercations became physical, with Courtney slapping Christian as a means of reprimanding him. Neighbors would complain about several explosive fights where they'd hear screaming, door slamming, and glasses breaking. In one instance, Courtney threw Christian's things off the balcony. In another, a neighbor of theirs caught Courtney swinging at Christian, scratching his face. A while after these incidents, they moved, but the abuse continued. Just a month after settling into their new place, Courtney was caught on camera being extremely violent towards Christian, who did nothing but defend himself. According to their new neighbors, Courtney was yelling at Christian so much they could hear it from 2 floors above. As tensions escalated between the couple, Christian began secretly recording their fights, and in an audio posted to TikTok by TMZ, Courtney is heard screaming at him, slapping him, and calling him the N-word multiple times.
Drop your high pitch.
Okay, I'm not doing it on purpose.
You touched Sahara. You know damn well the right thing to do is to tell me.
Yes, and I am so sorry.
So shut up and let me f***ing slap you, dumbass.
No, you're not gonna slap me.
On a few occasions, the police were called, one of which there's even body cam footage from one of the officers for. In it, Courtney's heard accusing Christian of stalking her, but the cops refrained from doing anything about these accusations since, when the apartment was examined, it was obvious that he lived with her. A day after, law enforcement once again showed up, but this time it was different. The call didn't come from a rattled neighbor, but from Courtney herself, who told them that Christian was stabbed, while he could be heard in the background fearing for his life and saying he couldn't feel his arm, while Courtney repeatedly apologized. When the cops showed up, she was covered in blood and holding his body. Despite being rushed to the hospital, he passed away due to the knife wound in his chest. Courtney was arrested and brought in for questioning, which we also have a video of. In it, she's visibly desperate about the situation as she realizes the gravity of what she's done. In her despair, she gave multiple, inconsistent retellings of the incidents, and perhaps most importantly, without the presence of a lawyer in the room. While she initially claimed she'd stabbed Christian in self-defense, there were no signs of bruising in her body to back the claim up, and according to forensics, the knife was thrusted in a downward motion, which went directly against claims that she'd thrown the knife at him from 10 feet away. However, the interrogation ended abruptly as Courtney began threatening her own life. Because of local laws, people with that kind of risk can be institutionalized even in a situation such as hers, and as such, she was put in a psychiatric hold. The thing is, when this holding period ended, she wasn't arrested again, so she was free while awaiting a homicide trial, which is quite the extraordinary circumstance. A woman who was familiar with the case saw Courtney at a bar with her dad and confronted her.
You'll take her. Right now, you should go. Yeah, you should go.
Just
you just know her boyfriend. Yeah, you did. Yeah, and He's right. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
As negative attention kept piling onto Courtney's case, she went to Hawaii and bought a house worth $1.3 million. This was most likely done to transfer the money into an asset and hinder it from being seized. Her lawyer spoke to TMZ, reiterating Courtney's claim that she stabbed Christian in self-defense, adding that he had been abusing her for a long time. Meanwhile, a GoFundMe page was opened by his family to fund the arrangements for his funeral, raising over $80,000. As the couple's online history was unearthed, a few particular comments from them became the topic of discussion. For one, when she was a guest on a podcast just weeks before the murder, she mentioned her preference for black men in a way that suggested she was still single, which at the time she definitely wasn't. On the same token, a series of tweets from Christian surfaced that involved him disparaging black girls, along with others in which he glorified white women. Though he had made most of these in high school and in passing, the Tariq Nasheed types were merciless, essentially saying he deserved what happened to him because of the things he'd said. On August 10th, 2022, a whole year after the murder took place, law enforcement finally managed to break down the wall of litigation that Courtney's defense had put up to keep her out of jail, as she was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. Forensics showed that, based on the amount of blood on the crime scene, it took a while after stabbing him for her to realize what she'd done and call the police. Additionally, she was on call with her mother for the entire duration of the fight, and she confirmed that Courtney was accusing Christian of lying and telling him to leave the apartment. A few months later, Courtney went to trial and pled not guilty. Just 3 days after that, a multitude of new evidence would surface, which made her look even worse if that was possible. The couple's text messages would be shared with the public, and they showed that this wasn't the first time Christian was the victim of a stabbing. Messages of his from October 2021 said, "This crazy thing about all of this is that yesterday when you stabbed me in the leg and you saw how bad it was hurting me and I couldn't walk and I couldn't do what you were telling me, I wish I could take your pain away. I wish it was me and not you. The next morning, I still woke up happy I still gave you a good day, and even though my leg was hurting because my girlfriend stabbed me, I woke up happy I took you to Vegas. Drove right back, helped you shoot, drank with you, and did blow with you just so you're having a great day, and I'm doing all of this while my leg hurts so bad. Did I make you feel like shit for stabbing me? No, I just sucked it up and hope tomorrow will be better." A later message read, "What if the knife sliced my lip, my beard, my cheek, my eye? What might happen next time? I pray there is no next time like that. February was the worst month I had so far. I got cheated on, I got called that word again, I got slapped in my stitches that has reopened multiple times, and it's not healing fast enough. I've gotten kicked out." In another audio that was made public, Courtney is heard saying she literally wants to kill Christian.
I'm actually not having a good day where I actually literally want to kill you, but you don't take me seriously.
Seemingly everything was foreshadowing that this would be the final destination of the relationship. While her defense team tried to get a pretrial release, it would be denied as, due to her OnlyFans wealth and previous trips to Hawaii, she was seen as a flight risk. The trial didn't just affect her, but her family, since it was discovered that right after the murder, she'd wired $1 million to her dad, which reinforced that they were trying to protect her wealth. Her father claimed she didn't have as much money as people said she did, alleging her net worth was just $11,000 in liquidity and a little under $400K equity in her house. Just 1 month later, Courtney was denied bail and left the court in tears, as she's currently looking at the possibility of a life sentence for her crime. So what's the moral of the story here? Well, don't kill people. That's probably about it. As stated in the beginning of this video, we typically expect criminals to wear it on their sleeve, with face tattoos and whatnot, but looks can be deceiving. Heinous acts can be committed by anyone, and their appearance and sex can have nothing to do with it. Anyone could be a creep, anyone could be a murderer. This doesn't mean you should accuse everyone you know of potentially being some kind of dangerous actor or get paranoid about it, but it's more to say that these people are human too. They're girlfriends, TikTok stars, and daughters. Does that mean we can forgive their crimes? Of course not. But it does bring us one step closer to understanding them and how to prevent these crimes in the future. In any event, I've been Turkey Tom, thanks for watching, and until next time, leave me alone.
I've heard it 1,000 times before, and it's just not that funny anymore.